Hey everybody, this is Heather and Jenny with Surviving Darkness, and we are on episode 17. So, this week, I guess you'd say I had a little step in the right direction because I was actually able to buy something for our dad's grave, and I haven't been able to do that for a long time. So, anyway, I was glad to be able to do that. I saw it and, well, it didn't feel angry when I, saw it, thinking about why I should want to put that on his grave, and I don't want to. I was able to actually pick it up and, buy it, which is better than I've felt in a long time. So I guess that was like a little small victory, So I just didn't, for the first year or so, Mom and I would go put flowers on there, make sure that there was flowers and everything. And after that, it just couldn't. And Mom still doesn't now. We just lasted for a long time that we couldn't do it. So
I think people just deal with it differently. Like, I couldn't go for like 4 to 5 years because his grave was right beside our brother's.
Mm-hmm.
And just to see those graves there, it was just so final.
Right.
I know that they're gone, but it's just that reality of seeing their names on those graves.
Mm-hmm.
And seeing the dates and stuff, that they're really gone. It's not like I sit around all day and like talk to them and act like they're still here.
Right.
But I just, it's the finality of it when you actually see that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's so hard. It's almost like a slap in your face every time you go or I go. It's almost like it catches my breath because I see their names on the ground.
And some people want to go every day or whatever in general. And, some people don't ever want to go.
Right.
Like you say, everybody's different. And, so I get that everybody deals with everything too in their own way.
There's so many there close together that we loved. And it's like, it's sort of overwhelming to me because you've got like 5 people right there.
And the uncle that we just lost, a couple months ago. Yeah. he was around for longer than the other ones were, but the other ones that were there, what was there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 that died very, very close together.
Right.
And so, yeah, I see what you're saying. It is hard to
go there and see those names.
And see, people who were not just family, but who had become family.
Right. That we had known our whole lives.
Yes.
Like Dad's best friend, like right there below him at his feet.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, it's a little overwhelming when you go and you see all those names and it's like they're all really gone.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the finality of it. You're like, it's like you're not thinking about it all day, every day.
Mm-hmm.
But when you go see that, it's like, it's there. It's real.
Yeah.
It's real.
Yes.
I guess you sort of want to block out all those things. I don't know if block out's the word. You just don't want to focus on it every day.
Right. Mm-hmm.
But when you're there, I mean, that's the focus. It's right there in front of you.
And then when we did go to the grave site recently, I was able to tell, my little one who everybody was and everything like that. And after one little meltdown, I guess you'd say, then after that, I was able to talk about who all was there and all of that. But he knows who his grandfather is. He knows that. He knows who he is. And the other day he asked me if I had a brother, and he just didn't realize, I guess I haven't talked about him as much, and so I said, yeah, I did. It was, Uncle Richie. And he said, well, who was that? So I pointed and over on our, I don't know what you'd call that thing, like just cabinet hutch thing. I said, the one in that picture there. And I said, that was my brother. And, so I guess I just wasn't, I think about him a lot, but I evidently have not talked about him as much. I don't know how to explain that.
But you may have talked about him and just didn't register with
with
him.
him. Yeah.
And then
yeah.
all of a sudden it was like, wait, who is this person she keeps talking about?
Yeah, could have been. Yeah.
Because his focus was more on trains and Roombas and
Yes.
everything else
Yes.
there for a while. His mind was occupied with those other things.
And
And
this
now
is
he
a little-
wants to know who people are.
Now he's really curious about everything. Like, what does this mean? And who is this? Or, you know, kind of where do they tie in and all this other stuff? Yes. Yeah.
I don't think my boys knew even where, even if they do remember now where their graves are, because we never really went there. We didn't go there a whole lot. I know one of them, I don't remember which one, had asked me just, I don't know, a year or two ago where everybody was buried. So I was like, well, let's go.
Yeah.
Didn't really want to, but I don't feel that I should keep my kids from knowing where,
Right. Yeah.
where they are.
You can show them, and it can be on them as to how often they go or don't go or whatever.
Exactly.
But and like you say, now they know.
And then I feel guilty when I do go because there isn't much on there. It's like was he just forgotten or what? And it's like worrying about, again, what people think. That whole thing that we've went through our whole lives. What will people think? That he's got a sorry family that won't go and put stuff on his grave? But people don't know what'll happen and why things are that way, or why we don't go frequent or whatever.
And that's what Mama said. She said, I don't want to, I have no desire to take anything out there right now.
Right.
Whatsoever. And that's okay. You know, I mean, everybody has to deal with everything in their own time and their own way. And if that's how she feels right now, she may never feel like taking anything out there.
Right.
And that's okay too. You
Right.
know, I mean, if that's how she has to deal with things, that's fine. There can't be a right or wrong. Like, we can't say, oh, well, you're wrong for feeling like that when we don't want to go out there either. You know, I think I had said a couple, maybe probably about 4 or 5 weeks ago. I don't remember if I said one here or what, but that my little guy had come home from pre-K and was saying that one of his friends was talking about a demon and that he had been seeing a demon. And I was like, what in the world are you talking about? And I tried not to acknowledge too much with him because I didn't want to feed into anything. But at the same time, if he was seeing something, I needed to know that part also, to where we could deal with it if there was something like that, you know, going on. And so anyway, he told me today that the little boy had said he was looking at a picture, and I don't know if he was meaning that the lady had a grin on her face that was kind of eerie or something, but said she looked like a demon, is what the little boy said.
Well, I think it's scary that the little boy knows what a demon looks like.
Yeah. So I don't know if he's seen like a video or something, right, or what, but it eased my mind because I was worried about everything, you know, with everything that we've gone through. I didn't want him to be seeing something and not telling me or whatever. And you just worry about that stuff, you know, especially with your son seeing things starting around 6 years old, you know.
Well,
and so
at one point we wondered too if there was something, because he had his little friend and all. So I mean, that was something that we sort of let's wait this out, because kids do have like very wild imaginations, and just have imaginary friends. Like, I had an imaginary friend, but you know, we know how that went.
I came to life, and there's nothing that was any better in your world than me.
Right. When you have an imaginary friend named Jenny, and then your mom has a child and names her Jenny. I keep saying, you know, I could have outgrown that imaginary friend, but I was stuck with you for life. That's just not even right.
You can never outgrow me, ever. Yeah. I am that thorn in your side.
But yeah, we were a little concerned because we didn't know if he was really seeing something or if it was just an imaginary friend. And I think he's pretty much outgrown.
Yeah, he's not talked about anything like that anymore. And when he said that today, I was like, whew, because now I know that it was just somebody else talking and it wasn't something that
he is saying.
Yes, or is talking to him or whatever either.
And it's sad that we have that mentality. But I mean, it's
from experience.
What we've seen. And I don't want to feel like I'm being all spooky and want to assume that everything is evil and all. But it's like you want to be on guard. You want to know. And
that's what I was saying was if there was something going on, I would ask him, why did you say that? Or why do you feel that way when he's scared or whatever? Because I wanted to be able to help him if there was something going on. Go ahead now and start helping. But at the same time, I didn't want to feed into anything either and scare him more by talking about something, So I've just let him kind of open up about it, or however you want to say it. Just talk to me about it when, however, I knew it would come out, one way or the other.
Right.
And so that made me feel better today.
That sort of like leads into us looking at designing t-shirts because, we want to get the word out as to what we do and just a way to catch people's eyes, like what is surviving darkness. And like the quote that we had decided to put on the back, which was victim by force, survivor by choice.
Yeah.
And that is sort of, you could have just ignored it and he could have turned into a victim of that same torture and demonic presence and fear that we had growing up. Or you made the choice that you're a survivor and he's going to survive that too.
Yeah.
So it is a choice. You can stay in a victim mentality and never grow past it, never grow up, never learn from it. It's stay in that woe is me type of atmosphere. Or you can say, I'm not going to be held down by this anymore. And it's a choice. And I think that my cat is a little demonic today too. I don't know that she's ever played on this cat tree, but she sure is right now. Yeah. So if you hear any noise in the background, it's the crazy cat who's trying to interfere with our podcast today. But anyway, that's the thing. You get to choose. And we chose, I don't want to say that we're survivors by choice because we're that great, because we're not. We chose to decide to heal, and our healing has come from God.
Right.
So it is by choice. We are survivors by choice, but not because we said, oh yeah, we're survivors.
Right.
We made the choice not to keep hurting over all of it. So a lot of it is choice, but it's the choices that you make to survive instead of choices that you make to continue being a victim.
Which is what we've said too about like not choosing to go down the path of drugs or alcohol because for us it wouldn't have turned out well at all. To even try to numb it just a little bit with that because of genetic dispositions to being addicted
to anything.
Yes.
To anything and everything.
Yes. I'm not saying that we never drink or what I mean, but not on a regular basis. It just can't be.
Right.
Because it just can't.
We've tried. We've tried to cope with stuff in ways that weren't so great. But we realized that, God is the only way that we were going to heal.
Yeah.
And that's, again, why we do the podcast. It's a healing for us also, and a way to reach out to people and say, hey, you can be a survivor too. It's about choices.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah.
Because, honestly, are you surviving if you turn to other things? Then you're just a victim to something else.
Yeah. And you're letting that control your life.
Right.
So you're just going from one thing that was controlling your life and your mind or whatever the circumstances were to something else that's doing the exact same thing.
You're no longer being abused, I guess, by someone else, but you're abusing something.
And we're not trying to sound like we're not sympathetic,
Right.
to people who have addictions and things like that. We had to be,
Right.
because of our family history.
Right.
And because we were around that stuff.
Right.
But at the same time, again, we have chosen to not do that because, or if we did, like you say, turn to something different, then we realized that
it's not
us
helping.
personally,
Right.
that wasn't going to help us in any circumstance. And that was not how we were going to be able to make it through anything.
It seemed to compound the issue
Mm-hmm.
because the issue was still there. And then I have this other issue on top of the issue that I had before.
Mm-hmm.
And then I have the guilt of what I've done on top of the guilt that was there from the things that you were forced to do, which I think I've sort of gotten over that guilt.
Right.
That initial guilt, because you feel it.
Mm-hmm.
Anytime you've been abused, you feel guilty. Like, what did I do? Did I do something to deserve this? Did I say something? Things like that. And then, like, even the guilt of using the Ouija board. I carried that for years. It was like, well, this is what I get for making a bad decision.
I don't guess I ever did with that because I was younger than you all. So, like we've talked before, when I did it, I was so young that I didn't realize what the consequences of it was. And I did it because it was a game, it was a game.
It was a game for all of us.
And so.
And we didn't know that it could cause what it caused.
Mm-mm.
I mean, we honestly thought we were talking to some ghost in the house.
Yes.
We did not realize the evil that can come out of something like that.
And I cannot remember where we were, but I was talking with somebody and they were saying that they were at, I'm going to say like a consignment shop or a flea market or something like that. And their kid was like, oh my gosh, look at this. It's a Ouija board, Mom. Can I have it? Can I get it? And this was just recently, within probably the last month that I've been talking to somebody about it. And their kid was like 11 or something like that. And she was like, absolutely not. Because there is nothing good that comes out of those. But it was still in the game section. And that's how it's still sold.
It is.
As a game.
It is.
And it is not by any means whatsoever a game.
Right. And people do not realize that because of where it's located. And a lot of people don't believe in the whole other realm.
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, nothing's going to happen. That stuff's not real anyway.
And I was at a slumber party a long time ago, and one of the girls had one at her house. So we all loaded up in my friend's car. Her sister drove us to that friend's house to get the Ouija board. And I told him whenever we got back, I said, if you all do this, I said, y'all can have at it. I said, I will either leave or I will leave and go into another room. I will be no part of this whatsoever. Why? There's nothing wrong with it. And I was like, you all just don't know. And I was in probably 8th grade. So there were definite things that were going on at that time that I would not talk about. And that's all that I would say. I would just say, and I remember just saying, I lived in a house. We did stuff with one of these. And that is all that I'm going to say. But I will not be a part of this.
Right.
But they thought it was cool.
Right.
Right.
And
of course, if that's how it's advertised and you think you're, oh, well, we're just talking to the, Casper, the friendly ghost, then of course it's going to be cool. But that's not what it is.
And that's what we thought. We thought that, whoever ghost was left behind in that house was who we were talking to. Mm-hmm. And as I've got more knowledgeable over the years, I do not believe that there is a ghost. I do not believe that there is a spirit of a person left behind. I think that it's demonic presence that's a familiar spirit that knows all about that person and it can mimic that person. And to where you would believe that that's who it is. Mm. And that's how it gets its hold on you. And it's anybody that I've talked to that have thought that they've had this nice, friendly ghost in their house. It starts out that way, but it's always wound up being menacing after a while. After you acknowledge it and it's almost like you're feeding it. You know it's there. If you ignore it, it's not getting so much pleasure from it. But if you acknowledge it and you're like, oh yeah, this thing does this and this thing does that, and it'll turn the light on and it'll turn the light off and does this and does that, then it starts getting a little bit stronger and a little bit more menacing as it goes. So I've never really heard anybody say that I have this nice ghost in my house and it stayed nice.
Right. Yeah. That's like whenever I was talking a couple weeks ago at the salon, and we were talking about our podcast and the things, because one of the workers there didn't know anything about the podcast, and they were saying, that they had a ghost in the salon. And as I started talking about what our podcast was about, that's what I said. This does not give you, permission or allow you to start doing things,
Right.
because when you do start acknowledging them or talking about other things like that, then yeah, sometimes it does feel like, oh, well, I'll just do whatever else I want to do. So yeah.
And I mean, I had that guilt because I guess maybe I felt like I felt guilty for being stupid and ignorant to what exactly can happen when you mess with something like that. That's where the guilt came from, not being knowledgeable enough.
Right.
To know what I was doing and seeing what it had opened up and what all it had caused.
And it probably just gave power to whatever was already there, and whatever was going to happen anyway was going to happen.
Right.
But I mean, not saying it didn't make it stronger. Yeah. But I also feel too that because it has happened through generations, that there were things that were imminent until we were, definitely going to stop it.
Right.
So
right.
Yeah, like we've said before, there were things that, we went through and other generations have, and you almost are destined to go through that stuff until you do something about it, until you change your circumstances. You're going to go through that.
And I feel like, too, when we say victim by force, that's also when we had to keep our mouths shut.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And now we're survivors by choice because we're choosing to bring it to light.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We're choosing to say we're not going to be held in that victim state anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And we're giving people the opportunity to express what they've gone through so that they no longer have to feel like they're in that victim state anymore. Because there is power in talking about the things that have tried to destroy you, bringing stuff to light that was in the darkness.
Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
There's just a lot of healing in that because you no longer feel afraid to say something.
Mm-hmm.
And that is a huge weight off your shoulders when you feel that you can say something and there's not going to be repercussions so much as like a mean message on your mirror.
Right.
There's not going to be threats of what's going to happen because you went and said something to someone.
Right.
And it not necessarily from a human, but evil threats and things hanging up in your closet and things like that and hatchets in your bed.
Mm-hmm.
You actually know that it knows now that you're no longer in control, or you're no longer controlled by that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
We're not operating in that fear anymore.
Right.
So
and that was, last night I was laying there in bed and I have a piano in my bedroom and I heard what I really thought was one of my dogs I had laid up against, because sometimes she'll lay underneath the piano. And I heard a noise at the piano, and it was like a one of the piano keys hitting. And at first it scared me because I was like, okay, the dog is not down there. She didn't hit the piano. But then again, at the same time, I was like, no, I'm not doing that because it's an old piano. Chances are something probably broke loose just now,
Right.
So there's probably a reason for it, know, and that was it. I didn't,
go any further
no.
with it.
Mm-mm. Mm-mm. And that's what I said. I literally said out loud, I'm not going to be scared. And that's what I said. And I just went right on looking at my phone.
Right.
Because maybe there was something, you know what I mean? Trying to do something. But at the same time, I was like, no, I'm not going to give you that. I'm just not going to do it.
Right.
So.
And I sort of feel like, though, like when we first started doing this, plumb up until even last week, it was like every single time you turn around, there was something something else happening that was sort of like trying to destroy your spirit, to where you're like, do I really want to even keep doing this? Because every time I turn around, there's something new being thrown at me. But I sort of feel like since we're still doing it, it's sort of backing off a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And even in the move, how I was like, well, it's always gone with me. I don't feel so bothered.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really feel like it's with me right now.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to hold on to the faith that it's not going to be anymore.
Right.
And I think that sharing so much has probably helped with that.
And I was thinking, when you were saying that we didn't, when we were being forced to be a victim at that time and going through things and weren't able to say anything, that even, just for myself, when we first started doing this, sometimes it was a little bit hard to start talking about things. And, as the weeks have gone on, it's like, no, you know what? People are always going to believe what they're going to believe anyway, as to whether what we went through was true or not. And so, and not everybody's going to believe what we have said. And that's okay. You know what? And I used to be, whenever you said we just had to watch and everything had to be a certain way or whatever. Well, that was the way that it was then, but it doesn't have to be that way now.
Right.
And I don't care, and I'm not saying that like I really don't care like hatefully. I'm just saying that what somebody thinks is not going to bother me anymore when I'm talking about this, because I know what I went through. You know what you went through. Whoever else has gone through stuff like this knows what they legitimately have gone through. You have those people that do make things up, and they, so they'll be dealt with too if they're telling lies and things like that about other people.
Right.
But if you're expressing the truth and you're saying what exactly happened, and then God's going to give you strength.
Right.
And even if people say, well, I'm sorry, I just don't see how that, I don't see that happening. That's okay. If we would be confronted, or whatever about it, then that's fine. You don't have to believe what I say.
No.
And, you're entitled to that opinion and to whatever you think. And I can still love you as a person. That doesn't mean that I have to be hateful and be like, okay, well, we're done. No, you don't have to believe what we've said. No. But we went through it, and this is why we're speaking about it, so other people can know that when you talk about things, you do feel better and you do get strength and to be able to move on.
And everybody's trauma is different. Mm-hmm. It doesn't necessarily have to be a demonic thing. And what we might see as nothing major might be traumatic for someone else.
Yes.
It's all in, I think, your mentality.
And you just made me think, our little one was far from planned by any means. By the time that he came along, we had already accepted the fact that we weren't going to have him. And just in a regular conversation with my sister-in-law several years ago, probably 10 or 12 years ago, it was, well, what made you guys to just think about not having kids? Just having conversation. And she said, there's just things that you go through when you're younger that you don't want somebody else to go through. And so I never asked. I didn't know if there was any type of, sexual molestation or anything like that had ever happened with anyone around her or anything like that. And then after she and I talked about what I'd gone through, I don't know, I guess it was probably right before we got pregnant. She said, I never went through anything like that, but my childhood was not easy. And I know it wasn't, because I'm married to her brother and I know the things that he has said. Mm-hmm. And they weren't in a child abuse situation, something like that. However, their life was not easy. So like you just said, you don't know what somebody else's trauma is. And, they didn't go through the same things she didn't go through the same thing we did, but I didn't, say, oh, well, then you didn't go through anything. No, that is her trauma. That is something that has affected her.
Right.
And to the point that she has made the decisions that, no, I don't want anything to be able to carry through me to somebody else because of the things that I've gone through. And I get that,
Right.
So.
And that's how she has chosen
to
be a survivor.
Mm-hmm.
That's, instead of staying in that victim mentality, she's chosen to survive that way.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah. And, like you said, I wasn't telling her that was right or wrong in any way. That was just her decision. And like you said, that's how she deals with, or that has dealt with that, just the same as you talked about things for a while. I didn't. And, that was my way of dealing with things. I wasn't really dealing with it, but at the same time, I was making it through life.
Right.
And that was my way of dealing with it. But, and everybody just handles things differently. But at some point, you have to confront what you have, I guess you say, like the cards you were dealt, however they were dealt with to you, and whatever age they were dealt to you at some point in your life, you have to confront that,
right,
to be able to move on, or you can stay in that mentality of, right, well, this is just the way life's going to be. I'm just going to suffer from everything that I've gone through, and that's how I'm going to live. Just be bitter or be hateful or everything, or whatever.
Or the whole everything that I do is because this was done to me.
Mm-hmm.
And just the whole victim mentality. I'm not going to take responsibility for my actions because this was what happened to me.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people do stay in that.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people don't mature past that.
Yes.
It's like they're always at that. They could be 60 years old and their mentality is still at like 13.
Mm-hmm.
Because they're stuck there.
Mm-hmm.
And that's sad. And I don't know if talking about what happened would mature them at that point. It's almost like whatever happened, it just stopped their mental and emotional growth.
Mm-hmm. And there's, I don't know, there's a lot of mental illness in our family, and we jokingly say that we have a lot of crazy people in our family, but a lot of it is kind of legit too.
Right.
And yes, things have happened, and they have had parents or, grandparents, things like that have caused them to turn out the way that they have. And I'm not saying that we're perfect by any means. I'm sure that some people think we're crazy too, which is probably the truth 3/4 of the time. But,
right,
at the same time, we didn't want to be like those people either, and have that same, well, I'm going to think that everybody's out to get me all the time. Or I'm going to think it's okay to just do whatever I want to people and it'll be fine, No, that's not okay.
No.
And just because that's what you went through and what your parents put you through doesn't mean that you have to do those same things.
No, you don't.
Not at all. I love my brother. He was an alcoholic. Period. He tried to get sober and everything. Like, he did good. But we didn't have to do that. Our dad was at one point too. Our grandfather was. We didn't have to be. We didn't have to be mean to our kids to the point that they weren't, it's like yours. They weren't allowed to go anywhere and do anything at all, because you needed to know where they were at all times and have them under your control and under your thumb and everything like that at all times, because that's just the way it was going to be. Right. No, that's because and I know that circumstances were a little bit different when we were growing up, but at the same time, we could have let our mind be warped that way too, that's the way it's supposed to be. And, like you say, through God too, we were like, no, wait a minute, that's not the way that it is supposed to be.
And I was thinking earlier, it's so easy for the things that you see in front of you to control you.
And to become acceptable at some point, too.
Right. Well, what I was thinking was more like, you've seen, we saw the things that were going on. It was right there in front of you.
Yeah.
But you didn't so much see God. So we had to have the faith that God is still bigger than what I'm seeing in front of me. God is still in control, although it doesn't feel like it.
And that's hard, like you say, because you're seeing nothing but pure evil in front of you all the time.
And what you're seeing is, it felt almost like God wasn't there when we were going through all of that. But he was. But it didn't feel like it because we didn't see him right there. We saw the stuff on the mirror. We saw the stuffed animals hanging up in the closet. We saw the hatchets and the knives in the bed or in the headboard. We saw all that stuff. So we had to sort of go into our spiritual eyes and see that God was stronger than everything that was going on. We still had to hold on to that faith that no matter what we were seeing with our physical eyes, we still knew in our spiritual eyes that God could overcome what we were seeing. And we wouldn't have had that if Mom hadn't at least raised us in church. It had us there on Sundays. And maybe it's just that relationship sort of that we had with God and didn't even realize it at the time, that we knew no matter what, good was going to overcome evil. It had to be that way. Whatever we were going through, it could keep doing this for right now, but good had to overcome eventually. And it did. But at that point in life, it was hard to see where or how good was going to overcome, because everything in our lives was controlled by evil. And that's back to a choice. We chose to want to survive and go above the evil that we were seeing on a daily basis.
And sometimes going down the wrong road or not having that faith and not turning to God is so much easier. Even now, it just is. Life is hard. And then life as a Christian, or, what is very hard.
Right.
We're not perfect. Not at all. We're still human. Somebody just said that to me the other day. They were like, my flesh gets weak. And, I was like, absolutely. You know what I mean? It does.
Yes.
And so I get it. And, so. And then I guess I can just talk personally. When I back off from going, I'm one of these that has to be around people. I have to be at church. I have to be able to feel the Spirit, be in the congregation with people, and things like that to keep me afloat.
Right.
Because if not, I drift. Some people don't, they can be, at home and read their Bibles and, listen to the sermons or whatever, and they're fine, they do okay with that. And they, and there's physical reasons or whatever that they can't go. And I understand that. I'm not meaning that, but I'm just saying for me personally, and I feel it.
I do too. And
so, and then I'm like, no, I can't, I mentally cannot do this on my own. I just can't. Right. So yeah. And I don't know, I guess that's another thing too, that we talk about, like when somebody is grieving or, or they're going through another person being so sick and everything. And it's like, how do you do that without God? And that's what we've said, that we could not have made it through what we did without God, you know? So, and like you just said, that little tiny bit of faith, like they say, like a mustard seed, that's all we had to have, was just knowing that was what was going to be better, or that was what was going to help us out and to, like you say, overcome everything.
Eventually it would have to get better.
Yes.
And even now we still carry that same mindset. Like when things come at us financially, anything, it's like a sickness, anything, it's going to get better. We still hold on to that faith that God's going to turn the situations around. And
just like
over the years,
car,
over the years, he has turned the situations around. And I'm not going to say that I'm not human. And when it first happens, I don't automatically just panic and be like, oh my goodness, how are we ever going to survive? What am I going to do until next payday? What are we going to do? And all of that, instead of just stopping at first and not doing the whole panic thing and being like, you know what? God's already got it. He already knows what's going to happen ahead of time. Why am I stressing? But it's just a reaction that I automatically do. I've got to stress out before I get myself under control and be like, nah.
Right.
Nah. God's going to take care. And he always does. He always makes a way for us to get past whatever obstacle has been put in our way.
Mm-hmm.
And then also, a lot of times people consider blessings and stuff like that monetary. There's so many other ways to be blessed.
Right. Yeah.
And I've noticed a lot here lately by blessing other people. That is such a blessing for me.
Mm-hmm.
It's like I was able to help them out. And them saying, you just don't even realize how much you helped me, is a blessing.
Mm-hmm. And sometimes it's just having a conversation and letting that person be able to talk to you.
Mm-hmm.
When you might not even know them from anybody. I had that with, earlier in the week with a patient who had just gone through a lot with his own son, and then one that he said was like his adopted son, and they had gotten in some trouble and ended up getting hurt physically. Both of them did. And it's just, God just works things out even that way, because he was my last patient that day. And he actually stood there and talked to me for about 45 minutes. I wouldn't have had that time. A lot of other times I wouldn't have had that time. And when we got done, he was like, I am so sorry I've just stood here and talked to you for this long. But I just had a breakdown in the other doctor's office because my blood pressure was through the roof, and I've explained the circumstances to, and he's trying to get a job, and he said, and I've explained the circumstances to him. And then I get over here to you, and I just feel like I can just talk. And I was like, you don't have to apologize, period. I'm just glad that I was able to do that I had this time to do that. And then it's like, well, wait a minute. God probably worked that out,
Right.
Because that guy needed someone to talk to.
Right.
And his family was going through a lot. So a lot of times men hold that stuff in because they're supposed to be the strong ones of the bunch. And they don't talk about it to the close people because they're supposed to be the strong ones.
Right.
But they still need people to talk to.
Right.
And God knows that.
Right.
And so even for me to just stand there and be like, yes, just listening to him. I didn't have any big words of wisdom. There wasn't anything to really be said other than just to let him talk. But that was what he needed at that moment. And
it's a blessing to know that people feel comfortable enough around you to talk to you.
And that's what I was getting ready to say. When he left, he was like, thank you so much. And when I closed the door, I was like, well, God, thank you for putting him here with me today to be able to talk about that. Because he did worry, he came up on something that he was scared to death. Two young boys he didn't know what he was going to walk into when he walked into the hospital, and so he was able to talk about that. Right. So, yeah, and like you said, I was thankful that, and a lot of times in healthcare, that's what we do. Yeah, we're not psychologists or, psychiatrists or anything like that, but
we just listen.
Yeah. And sometimes that's what we're meant to do,
right? Was
just to be there for that person. And God puts you or them in each other's paths to help one or the other out, or both.
Right. Yeah, just by listening. Mm-hmm. I mean, you're like, thank you, God, for giving me the strength to be there, the patience to stay and listen, and the empathy.
Yes.
Towards people and what they've gone through. And we may not have had that if we hadn't gone through what we had gone through.
And I remember there was a patient in one of the other clinics I used to work at, and he and his mom had come in, and it just so happened that I was the one that was doing, I guess you'd call triage, intake, whatever you want to call it. And so we always had to ask about their social history. And he said, well, I just 2 days clean from whatever it was. I don't remember if it was cocaine or pills or whatever. I don't remember. I just remember him saying, I'm only 2 days clean. And because of what our brother had gone through and how many times he had, struggled to get back on the wagon and then had done well, I was able to look at him and say, no, don't just say, I'm only 2 days clean. You are 2 days clean.
Right.
That's 2 days that have been nothing but a huge struggle for you. That's not just been days. That has been minutes upon minutes upon minutes of you making that decision to not go back out and do what your body is needing for you to do right now.
Right.
You are choosing to not go do that at this moment, even though the easy thing would be for you to go back out and grab that drug, So, but anyone in that clinic could have been the one that checked him in. And I'm not saying that they wouldn't have said the same thing I did. I don't know what they would have said.
Right.
But whenever that he and his mom left, he said to me, he said, I appreciate what you said. He said, and not a lot of people would have said anything like that to me.
Right.
Well, I felt like God gave me the words to tell him. And I don't know what he's doing now. I have no idea, know. But maybe with God telling me what to say to him, maybe that encouraged him enough to where he's still clean now. I don't know.
Right.
But at that moment, that's what God gave me, was the knowledge to know what to say to him for that time.
And you're right. I mean, if they need a big number to feel good about what they're doing themselves, let's count the minutes. Let's count the seconds.
Yes.
I've been like 3,000 seconds.
Yes. Yeah.
Clean.
And that's what I told him. I said, it's not just 2 days.
If that's what it takes for you to hold on.
Yes.
Then break it down to minutes and seconds. And
that's what I said. It's not just 2 days. It's
a lot
all
of
these minutes. Yes. And
a lot of seconds.
And I mean, like, I don't feel like I would have thought about that.
It only takes a split second to make the wrong choice.
And that's what I mean. That and that's what I was trying to say too. You could have gone out there and met one of your friends and been like, you know what? I'm going back and doing this. You know?
Or it could have been presented right there in front of him. And that split second, totally off the wagon again.
Yes. Yes. And so that's what I feel like, and I would like to know where he is now. And I'd like to hope that, or think that he's doing really good. I don't even remember his name. I have no idea what his name is.
But also these people that come and talk to us, they become like a prayer request for us. We know what they're going through. So we begin to pray about that situation with them. So it's like we sort of join the fight with them. So that's a blessing to know that, hey, they're not fighting alone. We're going to go help you. So that is a blessing for us to know that we are able to help other people.
And I just got chills. So evidently this is a good thing.
Right. It's a blessing for us to be able to say, hey, you're not fighting alone. Now that you've shared this with me, I can be praying with you. We'll go to God together and plead your case.
Yes.
And ask for the help that you need. So it is. I mean, then it's, you got more than one fighter in the ring.
Yeah, that is.
Or on the front line. You got other people there fighting with you. And that's the whole purpose of the podcast.
Yes.
Is to let people know that you're not alone.
And it doesn't matter exactly. I'm going back to what you said. You can choose to stay in that victim mentality, or you can choose to become the survivor, and you can choose to not ask people for help, you know what I mean, when you're needing it, or not ask people for prayer when you're needing it, and do that alone. Or you can reach out, even if it's just one person. And it, like you said, it doesn't matter which trauma or what you're going through at that moment. That doesn't you may think it's something small, but you may come to somebody like you or me, and we may be like, oh my goodness, you know what? Like, yeah, that we really need to pray with you, or pray for you about that. Be in agreement with you. With prayer for that. No, we didn't go through that same thing. However, that's something that's very big for you. And it's obviously causing you pain and issues right now. And so therefore, we can talk to you about that.
And whatever's kept in the darkness, though, and not brought to light, will keep eating at you. So the more you keep it to yourself, the more the enemy is in your head beating you down, beating you down, beating you down to where you feel like you're totally useless and worthless and everything else, then he's got you. But once you start sharing that stuff with other people and realize, it's okay to talk, it's okay to share that, and I'm not the only person that's ever gone through that, then it makes it's like a weight off of your shoulders, and you realize, hey, I'm not alone in all this.
And Satan will do that to you too.
He does.
Oh, well, you know what?
They're going to think you're crazy.
Yeah, and that's not a big problem. You know what I mean? Like, nobody needs to hear about what you're going through.
They're going to minimize it. It's not going to be anything to them.
Yeah, and that's what he does.
They're going to laugh at you. You consider that a problem. That's not a problem.
And that's what we did forever too. You know what I mean? Like, we had reached out for help. It didn't work out, and it was like, well, who's really going to believe us anyway?
Right.
You're fighting a demonic entity in your house and it makes things happen. Yeah, whatever.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
You're crazy.
Yeah.
Especially back in the 80s and 90s. It's not like it is now. They didn't have shows about it all the time then,
right.
And things like that. So, yeah. And that's and then we were used against each other too, to where we didn't talk about that stuff.
Right.
And, that's how he worked.
Right.
In our family.
Right.
So by using this platform to even just be able to talk to each other and open up about things more so it's at least helped me. Can't say what it's done for you,
it has definitely helped.
Yeah, I just know that from where I was from week 1 to now, and even saying, if I saw someone and they were like, I'm not sure that I believe you, that's fine. You know what I mean? Like, I would be okay with that. So
I think that our main thing with today's podcast is just letting people know that surviving is a choice. And only you can really make that choice. You can choose to stay in the victim mentality, or you can choose to be the survivor and rise above it. And that's just a way to encourage people that you can survive. It's a choice. You can survive anything that you've gone through. If you make that conscious decision that I'm going to survive.
Yes.
I mean, however you need to do it, whether it's talking to someone, whether it's finding a church organization. I wouldn't say like so much a religion, because sometimes religion is not so great.
Yes.
But find an organization where you feel like you're part of a family, where you feel that you can trust people. Find where you need to be that you can trust to open up. And trust that you're in good hands when you do. I mean, not everybody's going to be receptive. Not everyone's going to be friendly. Just test the waters.
And when you're in the right spot, you'll know it.
You will. So just choose to be a survivor.
I guess like that song, find out who your friends are, or whatever, or how you find out who your friends are. That's what that's how you do it.
Right.
You'll get that feeling. You'll know where you belong.
Right.
And who's on your side.
And we can always be contacted on survivingdarknesspodcast.com. You can just hit the little envelope and it'll send you to our email. We also have our Facebook page, Surviving Darkness podcast, not .com on Facebook, but Surviving Darkness Podcast. And you can message us on there. And we've had quite a few people messaging. So just reach out to us if you need to talk and want to know how we have managed to open up and survive, then we'll definitely get back to you with any questions that you have. Have a great week.